The story begins in a luxurious mansion nestled in a quiet neighborhood. A rich, plump ginger cat named Mr. Tony lives a peaceful life with his only daughter, little kitten. Despite his wealth, Mr. Tony values family above all else. He is a loving, doting father, and their home is filled with laughter and warmth. Poppy adores her father and spends her days playing around the house, filling their life with joy. They share a special bond and their home feels like a perfect world. One morning, Kitten comes bounding down the stairs, wearing her adorable school uniform for the first time. She looks so small and innocent in her neatly pressed clothes, her tiny paws clutching a backpack. Mr. Tony watches her with a mix of pride and nostalgia. His little girl is growing up so fast. He helps her adjust her bow and smiles, feeling both joyful and slightly melancholy, knowing this is one of the first steps toward her independence. Mr. Tony insists on personally taking little Kitten to school every day. Though they have a chauffeur, he prefers to ride an old-fashioned bicycle, with Poppy in a small seat attached to the back. They share these precious moments together, laughing and chatting as they pedal through the leafy streets. The neighbors smile at the sight of the rich ginger cat and his beloved daughter, happy and carefree. One fateful day, as Mr. Tony and little Kitten are biking to school, tragedy strikes. While crossing a busy intersection, a car swerves unexpectedly and Mr. Tony loses control of the bike. They both tumble onto the road. The impact is hard and little Kitten is severely injured. Time seems to freeze for Mr. Tony as he sees his daughter lying unconscious beside him. Shaken and terrified, Mr. Tony rushes to his daughter's side, his heart pounding in his chest. He cries out for help, tears streaming down his fur as he holds Poppy's limp body. The bustling city around them fades as he is consumed by fear and guilt. His once carefree world shattered in an instant. Strangers gather, an ambulance arrives, but all Mr. Tony can do is cry and pray for his daughter's life. At the hospital, Mr. Tony sits in the waiting room, his large frame slumped, his face buried in his paws. The minutes drag on, feeling like an eternity. When the doctors rush Poppy into surgery, he breaks down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. He feels utterly powerless as the medical team works tirelessly to save her. Mr. Tony's mind races with worry. Every sound, every passing nurse, fills him with dread. After hours of agonizing waiting, a doctor approaches Mr. Tony. The news isn't good. Poppy's injuries are severe, and though the doctors have done everything they can, her condition is critical. Mr. Tony listens in stunned silence, his heart heavy, tears brim in his eyes, and though he tries to remain composed, the weight of the situation overwhelms him. He pleads with the doctor, but deep down, he knows the chances are slim. His grief is palpable. Despite all efforts, little Kitten doesn't make it. When the final word comes, Mr. Tony collapses in grief. His world, once filled with light, now feels dark and empty. The loss of his beloved daughter leaves a gaping hole in his heart. He holds her tiny paw one last time, sobbing uncontrollably. His wealth, his grand mansion, all feel meaningless without her. When he back to home, Mr. Tony stands before a framed photograph of little Kitten that hangs on the wall. She's smiling in the picture, her eyes full of life. He stares at it, barely able to comprehend that she's really gone. Every time he looks at her picture, memories of their happy times together flood his mind, and fresh tears roll down his face. The house feels too quiet to big, and without her, it feels more like a hollow shell. Unable to cope with the overwhelming grief, Mr. Tony turns to drinking. He sits alone in his lavish living room, a glass of whiskey in his paw, staring blankly at nothing. The once lively ginger cat is now a shadow of his former self, drowning his sorrow in alcohol. The wealth that once brought him so much comfort is now meaningless. The only thing that mattered is gone. At night, Mr. Tony lies in bed, clutching little Kitten's favorite stuffed toy. Even in sleep, his tears flow. His dreams are haunted by memories of Kitten, her laughter, her smile, the way she used to cuddle up with him. In his dreams, she's still alive. But each time he wakes up, reality hits him like a tidal wave. He cries in his sleep, knowing that nothing will ever bring her back.